Welcome to the SIWIKE Podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE Podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. I'm your host Luki, and for today's topic, I thought we'd go into the topic of school. And the quote comes to mind of, "Don't let school get in the way of education." So that's a quote from Mark Twain, who is one of the American writers who wrote Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and he's got a lot of these great quotes that I love. And this one in particular, I want to dissect it a little bit. So you go to school potentially to get an education, right? But sometimes school is much more than just class, right? So you have exams, you have assignments, you have midterms, you have all those sorts of things. That's one aspect of school, but there's so much education that happens outside of the classroom. And I would encourage you to invest and look forward to some of that. Now, especially in this current time, in the COVID situation where you might actually be doing distance learning or online learning, and you have to be a little bit more purposeful of doing some of these things, but they're still around and available, and I encourage you to look to explore, right? So is to look at student clubs, volunteering and things like that, to go out there to develop your habits, your adulting skills and getting into the real world as you prepare yourself out there. To hone and get some experience, right? When you want to go into business, you want to go into science, you want to go into humanities or whatever, like how do folks actually know that you can do the work? And then the last is to take advantage and build meaningful connections. So I'll break each one of them down. So the first one, explore. So go out there and in addition to the classes, have some experiences with some clubs, right? Join them, be a member, attend the events, and if you can, be part of the executive team, like a director or president, vice president, whatever it is, and make some meaningful contributions to a club, to a cause, to an area that you are interested in. And there are hundreds of clubs at pretty much all schools, and some clubs that span different schools, universities, and colleges as well, and can be provincial or even national or even international. So the more exposure you get to these different things, the more you can actually say, well, is this the type of work that I like doing? And figuring out a way to give back. So thinking about volunteering, attending conferences and different seminars and events. Again, most of them are going to be online right now, but make the effort to connect with people and see what the school and the student life and the union or whatever have to offer, right? Maybe think of doing some personal projects as well, and kind of developing and exploring your interests in that regard, right? And then you'll also want to practice your adulting habits, right? So things like time management and creating your model week, adding some non-negotiable time in there, and seeing if you can actually get the stuff done that you want to get done. So finding your purpose and your why, and letting that guide you instead of procrastinating and putting things off until the last minute. Even developing skills like learning to learn, right? Memory techniques and ways that you can memorize and learn things a little bit better. Or taking a look at ways that you can use spaced repetition or the Pomodoro technique in order to learn more faster and a lot more concisely, and figure out how you can leverage that into your actual daily life. Thinking about asking for help, right? Using the safe environment of school and reaching out to people, learning how to say no. Oftentimes you can't do that if you have a required class or an exam, but for other commitments, sometimes that is a skill that is developed later on in life. But learning to say no and learning how to ask for help can be very helpful in terms of continuing on your career success. And even stuff like basic financial literacy, right? So if you do have a part-time job, taking some of those funds and saving it in an RSP, a TFSA, and let the compound interest work for you in the future. And then I'd also want you to hone and get experience, right? So if you are doing things like work integrated learning or co-op programs or internships, something where you can actually work for an employer, even if it's unpaid, right? Because oftentimes it's the experience that's worth more than minimum wage, right? So can you, instead of working or taking class over summer, get some work experience? Because yes, you might graduate a little earlier or with a little bit of a lighter workload at the end, but oftentimes without some of that work experience, you're not as competitive in the workforce and the environment. So take a look at that, maybe even part-time jobs, maybe even freelancing, taking a look at ways where you can take whatever you're studying and apply that in real life, right? Whether you're in technology and computers and you have to develop websites or programs on your own, you should be doing that outside of just the academic context of class. If you're in marketing, then well, can you help a not-for-profit or somewhere you volunteer with their marketing? If you're more on the humanities and communication side, well, what articles have you created and posted, and who have you been helping out, and what sort of messages have you been putting out in the world? So whatever it is that you want to be doing, get some of that experience. And if it's not to make you more marketable, it's to validate that you actually enjoy doing it. Because if you're going to commit to doing it for the next 10, 20, 40 years of your career, well, you might as well pick something that you enjoy doing, right? So get out there and hone that experience, right? Really practice those skills outside of the purely academic context of just assignments and exams. Actually doing it for a client, for someone that'll value it and use it in the real world. And then last but not least is to build meaningful connections. So really develop strong relationships with your friends, with your classmates, with other students, with alumni, with employers, whomever that you can get access to, and build those meaningful connections. Because you'll find that making that investment in your relationship capital, right, and in the future will return dividends much later in life. Right? And sometimes it's not even that much later, but if you stay connected with folks, the easiest thing that I recommend is to get a calendar invite. So go on your Google or Outlook calendar, create an appointment that recurs every 5 months, and set it to never end. And then within that, put the names and the contact information of all the students, all the people that you know, all the alumni that you've met, all the employers that you've met, and put it there. And then it recurs, let's say Sunday at 8 to 10 p.m., right? And then you connect with them on LinkedIn, you email them, you text them, or however you communicate with them, and let them know how you're doing. Ask them what they're up to, and potentially add some value and share some insights with them as well. So if you can really take advantage of building meaningful connections and foster those relationships, and then oftentimes that's a great use of the school environment. So keep in mind to leverage school for more than just the classes, right? And yes, you want to learn, yes, you want to get good grades, yes, you want to do that, but also leverage it with all the opportunities to explore what you want, to develop your adulting habits, to hone your experience, and to build meaningful connections. So that's it for this episode of the podcast, and hopefully we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.